Hey, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's weekly training here for all the members of Tax Sale Support. This is actually going to be one of our Tax Sale Titans episodes we're doing here this evening. We're going to be doing these on a weekly basis, and so we figure if we're going to get up and we're going to share information, there's lots of different things that we can share and talk about and make it a little bit more entertaining, and we can also I think you use that as well to share with other people as well. So it's one of the things we'll be doing here this evening. I think I've got Stephen with me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Shade said, we're going to do things a little bit different this evening and do one of our Tax Self Titan podcast. We're still going to go over some good information, really good information, interesting information. Before we get started, we want to give a shout out to all of our members, all of our program members that are on tonight, our coaching members, also our members there on YouTube. And we want to give a special thanks to our new advanced coaching members. Alicia, Monique, Scotty, Adita, and Visha, and Curtis. We appreciate all of you.
Yeah, in fact, we've had some different sessions we've done with many of you here just recently. So it's been nice to get to know a lot of you guys, and we're happy to have you. Also from Tax Sale Secrets, we always get questions, that will come in from different sites because we've got a number of different websites that we operate, and one of those is Tax Sale Secrets, and so sometimes we get questions that will come into those. It's one of those things that a lot of you may have already seen these things, because a lot of times people, by the time they find us, they've already kind of looked up some of this stuff. They've already been Tax Sale Secrets, but if they haven't before, there's something you can go to that's a site there where we have an ebook you can download. But yeah, some of the questions we get back from there are always great questions that we get, and we always appreciate that. We think we enjoy answering the questions whenever we can.
Yeah, absolutely. We have both the Tax Sale Secrets and the Tax Sale Support YouTube channels. So some of you guys may have found us that way originally. If not, it's worth it to go ahead and subscribe because we have different videos that we put out. We don't want to overload our members with constant videos, so we do put different videos out there that are available as well. So if you're not, go ahead and subscribe on there. Tonight, we've got a bunch of interesting things we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at some post-auction list and reviewing some properties. We're going to go look at some pre-auction list. We're going to talk about an important tax sale topic tonight. We're going to answer all of your questions. So we've got some exciting things. What we're going to start with is we're going to go look at an auction that just took place today and ended today, and we're going to look at a couple of properties in that sale.
Yeah, we are. So hold on just a moment here. We're going to jump over and get that pulled up here.
This is an auction that took place in New York through an online auction. And I think there was about 120, 130 properties that sold. So there was a lot of properties that were offered, and there was some great deals in there. There's some properties probably that we wouldn't have paid that much for. And that's generally the way it is with tax sale investing. You'll find properties that look good, that look interesting, and then you'll find properties that need work.
I just realized, at least is the New York link one of the links that's here on that first one?
Yeah, it should be that first one underneath where it says auction link. Oh wait, that's not showing up.
Yeah, that's
let me grab it for you quick.
It's okay, I've got it right here. At least I think I've got it here. Give me just a second, and I should have it pulled up here. And the sale that just wrapped up here in New York, is it the
yeah, the Asiego.
Oh yes.
Here, I'll go ahead and
that's right. I've got it right here. All right, cool. All right, so let me get this pulled over here. In fact, here, let me just pull it over here by itself. Okay, so yeah, this is the sale here that just wrapped up here. And yeah, it looks like you can see some of the things they had come up here. So
yeah, there was quite a few interesting properties that sold. The first one we'll look at is number 29, and this was just a piece of land. But I think it's interesting to go over because sometimes the land is underassessed. That's generally the way it is, especially if we get out into more rural areas. They'll underassess the land because they don't want to charge that high of property taxes on a property that's really not doing anything. It's just kind of sitting there. And so this property ended up selling. It has a full market value, or their assessed value, of around 33 grand, and it's about 10 acres. but I included a link there, Shade, you can click on next to it, and it actually has a property that's for sale right next to it.
Oh yeah, you can see this right here. Let me just enlarge this a little bit. So this is 11.28 acres here, and it is yeah, basically right next to the property here being listed for 110,000, which you can see that the guy that just won the other property here won it for 20,000. And this one I'm sure has an assessed value that's probably similar to the property we were just looking at there.
Yeah, it has a very, the assessed value is really close to it. In fact, this property has more hills than the other property, but it's located very close by on the same road. And then kind of looking over some of the comps, the property, I think that piece of land is probably valued between 70 to 100,000. We'd have to spend a little bit more time on it. But this is the type of property you could pick up. You could go ahead and take it through quiet title. It probably wouldn't cost that much because it probably won't be that complicated. And, turn around and sell it for 60 to 80 grand and make a great return on your money where you're not worrying about rehabbing a property, fixing a property up, or anything like that.
Yeah, well, and really, if you look at it, you've got 250 feet straight across of land that has essentially already been cleared for farming at some point here in the past. Because you don't have any trees going back for the good chunk or most of the length there, or at least a good chunk of it. So you've got property that's completely usable, nicely accessed from the road. Yeah, at $100,000, so that's really an awesome buy because at that purchase price, they can do whatever they want. I mean, if they want to turn around, they could turn around and probably blow this property out for $50,000, and more than basically double up their money and then some, and still be able to have it sold pretty quickly. And if they wanted to pursue quiet title on it and play it out a little bit more long term, there's no reason why. I mean, once you get quiet title on this property, there's no reason why you couldn't get the $100,000 for it or something close to that, $90,000 or $80,000, because the property value's there, and it's a full 10-acre lot there in the area. It has pretty good value.
Yeah, another thing to consider is that right now it's being zoned as farmland, but there's actually a lot of homesteads that are on these same 10-acre lots. You can kind of see a little bit when you're looking at the plat map. And so I think that if you were to get that, part of the reason that the low value is because it's being zoned as abandoned agricultural. But if you were to go ahead and change that zoning to rural residential, which you could do because there's properties there in the area that are going to be this exact same zoning, then that property value would actually, probably even double that, because now it's essentially going to be a homestead lot. So in buying this property, it could be worth it to look at the county and have that property rezoned, which means that it's going to have a higher assessed value, which in the long run means you're going to have to pay more property taxes on it, but we're just looking to sell it. But that would actually increase the value as well, just by having that property rezoned.
Yeah. Now let's see here. We do have various properties here that sold. Most of these things got some bids and some action.
It really wasn't too bad. Most of the properties, I think, sold for under 35 cents on the dollar. This property that's number 100 that sold for 150, I thought was kind of interesting though, and we can look a little bit more into it.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Yeah, there's actually two different properties on here. There's a property built in 2019, which is this big home, and there was a property built in 1920. And so when you try to pull up this address on Zillow, you can actually see that there's two parcel numbers as well. You see those two parcel numbers listed. So this is actually two different lots that are listed together. But when you pull up the address, it just pulls up the old property on Zillow and Redfin, which they've actually got interior photos, but that's the older house. And then they built this newer house next to it. So I think the property is probably worth, probably 400 to 500,000. 400 really conservative, probably 450 to 500, considering that it has two other homes on the property. One other home on the property, a total of two homes.
Yeah, that's interesting. You see, they've got a pool there in the backyard. But yeah, you can. Well, what's interesting is the way that the listing is set up there. Yeah, you can see how they've got built in 2019, 1,920 square feet. And then they have this, then they have a one-story ranch, that is 2018 and 2,100 square feet. So it's got to be the combined total of both of those, which is about 4,000 square feet.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I think that there's the address there that you can click on, and it'll take and pull up the property on Google Maps.
Yeah, there it does.
So if you scroll down next to it, you can see where it's taking you to. That's the 1920 property, obviously, and then the bigger one is the newer property. Or they might have even just demolished the old property and built a new property, because that looks like a shed, actually.
Yeah, I wonder if
Not
this
a
is.
shed, a
I wonder if
garage.
this is kind of like a duplex. I wonder if it's kind of like a big duplex, essentially. Where they have it, split into two different. You know what? I'll bet. I wonder here. Let's see. Let's try something. Let's see if it comes up here as a.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was saying. You'll see that there's some discrepancy, and I think that's part of the reason why it ended up selling. See, this was that older 1920 house, I believe. So I'm not sure if they demolished the old house and put up a new house, or if that other property is located on there.
They would have it.
But I assumed that that was maybe the 1920 house, because
There's
it has the barn. Yeah, see where the house is located? They demolished the old house and built on a brand new property. And so
My
it's
goodness.
pulling the comps of the old property and not the new property.
Yeah, that was quite the remodel that they did. You
Well,
can
it was
see
a full tear down and put up a new home.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty crazy, actually.
So, you're talking about a home that was built in 2019, really well done, and probably valued at, between very conservative 400.
Yeah, I could believe that. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a humongous house, a lot of square footage. So,
and
yeah.
trying to find comps in here, they were in the $500,000 range for this style or new home.
Wow, and this property, so this property sold for $149,000, basically, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's currently occupied there, but essentially, boy, they probably bought it. I mean, there's probably another $250,000 in this property.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, that's not bad. All right, let's go look at one more property here.
There was, a bunch of interesting properties, but I wanted to pull out a couple of the ones that are a little bit unique. I thought this one was really interesting, and I think I've got a link there that you can click on that'll take it to the Google Map view of it. But it looks to be kind of like a trailer, not a trailer, like there's a bunch of cabins within there, and you can see all of those cabins and trailer hookups as well. So, and you can see the big sign out in front, or at least the sign that they had. So I think it was some type of, campground, cabin type business. I guess it's Lizzie's Campground.
Yeah, there's kind of an aerial view there of the area.
Yeah, you got a couple of homes there. You've got cabins. You've got right there on the river. And so as far as kind of a potential commercial property, it would even be smart to look and see, maybe adding additional units to it. But it looks like a pretty nice location where you've got you could start building some residual income off of renting off the cabins and some of the trailer hookups.
Yeah, I think that you see you've got a pavilion right here, and then I think it's going to be a tornado shelter, maybe. I don't know. Unless it could be something else built, but built into the ground like that with a little roof on. I would think that would be some kind of a
in New York shelter. I'm not sure if you'd have as much tornadoes, would you?
I don't know. I
don't know.
Yeah, it could be some kind of cold storage or something, I suppose, too.
Or maybe a well
Yeah, that's possible.
house.
Yeah, it could be something like that. Well, that's an interesting property here that we're looking at. So it's
But it's
full market on
14
it.
acres. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty big chunk. Let's see how what the whole piece of property. Oh, it is big. I wonder if they've got an overlay of that. You know, from the here, let me click on this.
You can see it's got a couple of manufactured homes. Then you have the cabin hookups as well. It's
So it
got all
extends.
that frontage.
So these are all trailer homes right now that are renting on the property, basically, right?
Yeah, but they're not. I think they're just travel trailers. I don't think it's like a full-on trailer park. It looks like to me that they're travel trailers, like camping, recreational.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
pretty
they have some
nice.
long-term tenants there.
Yeah, that's not bad though. And the only property it doesn't really include, I think, is this house right here is the one that's cut out, right?
Yeah, just that one. But all of the manufacturers' homes back there at near the rear are included. And I mean, it sold for less than 100 grand. I think that the market value on this, and it's a little bit tougher to tell because it's kind of a residential / commercial property, but I would say it's valued at over 400.
Yeah, I would think so as well. And this is really a pretty good deal, especially for somebody that's like looking to get into something kind of like you like to have something like a trailer park or something where you can have a regular monthly residual income coming in. That's exactly what this is, because there are all sorts of people that are looking for, a place that they can, park and plug in their travel trailers. Maybe they want to stay there for a while. Maybe they want to stay in an area for, a few months at a time. Or longer even, this is the exact kind of place, where somebody can do something like that and they can be paying, a monthly fee. All you would really have to do, and this may already be set up for that, which it kind of looks like it is set up there with power and everything anywhere a person needs it. So all of the normal things you would go in and spend all this money to do to establish and set up are already done, at this location. At least you can tell that from looking overhead, looking at everything that is set up. I mean, there's already been a lot of work that has gone into making this so that it is something that can produce, income. And I guarantee it does. We could see by all the properties that are, that are there. There's quite a few different trailers that are there, as we're looking around at it, parked in different places. And so I'm sure there are people there that they're collecting some money from.
Yeah, well, and it looks like there's a lot of additional spots that you could go ahead and include additional trailers. It may
Tons,
be
yeah,
something
tons.
to looking out to the tiny home community that have them, on trailers that you can move. So like the unmovable tiny home communities and offering them spots and different deals. But it's an interesting property, at a price that's sold, I think, for less than 25 cents on the dollar. It has potential to sell it as is. I'm sure that there's a lot of investors that would go ahead and buy it from you. I mean, even if you sold it for 200 grand, you could make a quick 100 grand on it and probably sell it pretty quickly. And if you wanted to use it as a potential income property, putting a little bit more money into it, maybe improving some of the benefits and features of the place. It's definitely in a cool location, located right there by the river.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in terms of income potential, it's one of those properties that has a ton of potential, for what the income on it could be. Because again, it's all a matter of how many people you can get on there that are paying out, monthly. But there's no reason why it has to be small. You could probably turn one of those into quite a profitable business.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of the auctions that we talked about with our coaching students. Some of our coaching students registered for this auction. And there's different opportunities like this. Now, there's also going to be properties on this list that probably sold for more than we would have paid for them. But it's interesting that almost every auction we look through, we're going to find at least a few properties that were picked up at a good deal at the right price, and that are going to make great investments for the investors that purchased them.
Yeah, yeah. I think those were pretty interesting properties. And what's nice about those is we looked at several properties, but they weren't selling for huge money. I mean, most of those were within reason. I mean, and not only were they within reason, but they also offered tremendous profit potential. Each one of those properties had tremendous profit potential to more than double your money. You know, it was, you know, the opportunity looked quite a bit better than that with every single one.
Yeah, definitely. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the training tip of the week. We're going to talk about having a warranted property or selling warranted versus unwarranted.
Yeah, which is a question that you're always going to ask yourself with each property that you go to sell. You know, it's always a question here as to what the best way is to go about selling the property. Is this something that you're going to be selling as is? You know, are you going to be selling it as is using a quick claim deed to sell it, or are you going to be selling it with either, you know, a warranty deed or with title insurance, you know, of some form? And that's really the question you're going to be asking yourself with most properties. And usually there's a right answer, an answer that makes the most sense with any given property when you take into consideration, you know, the duration of the investment, you know, how long it's going to take, and also, you know, how you discount it. Because obviously, if you're going to sell it as is, you're going to discount the price, you know, for the buyer, and that's part of the appeal for the buyer is them getting it at a discounted price. But that also means that they're a cash buyer. You know, so again, you sell it for a discounted rate, but that's possible because we usually, you know, we're buying these for a very low percentage of value, and so that's something we can do if it makes sense for the time. So if selling it fast means, you know, you make a little bit less money, that's completely acceptable in a situation like that. That's good. That's fantastic, you know, to find a buyer and be able to turn your money around quickly. Let's say within less than a month.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as acquiring property, there's really three different ways that we can acquire property. Now, obviously, the most common way to acquire property through a tax sale is going to be a tax deed foreclosure. But we can also acquire property through tax lien foreclosures, and a lot of people acquire property through a redemption deed foreclosure. So regardless of how we acquire it, whether it be through, you know, one of these systems or not, we're eventually going to acquire a property that is not going to be a clear property, meaning it's not going to have a warranty deed. So one of the first things we do after an auction that we need to do is we need to get the deed from the county. Now, it's important to check state law because some states will allow you to access the property after the auction. So once you paid for the property, there's going to be certain states that allow you to access it. But in other cases, they're not going to allow you to access the property until you receive the deed. So it's important to determine that before accessing the property or, you know, starting the eviction process. See what the state law is within that area so that you don't violate any rules.
Right. The property deed is essentially what the county issues in order to assign ownership of the property. You know, if we go to sell the property, we use a quick claim deed in order to transfer that ownership, and the county will record that deed, you know, and issue a new, you know, property deed to the new owner. It's basically the job that they have. So when we buy a property from the tax sale, basically the county has just gone through and performed a foreclosure on this property, a judicial foreclosure. And doing so is what turns it from being a warranty deed into a tax deed. You know, that's also what clouds the title in a way as well, is because, you know, it goes through that judicial foreclosure. It no longer is a warranty deed, it's now a tax deed. Now, in doing so, you know, they can then sell it to us because it's in transferred ownership as well. So the ownership, you know, ownership rights were removed due to delinquent property taxes. So essentially, we have to wait though until we, you know, once we paid, we have to wait until we get the deed in the mail, and that deed essentially is what signifies our ownership. You know, and what Steve's saying, sometimes we have to wait because there are cases where it can take counties sometimes a month or two to get these deeds out. In other cases, they're really fast. Some counties can have deeds out to you electronically. Sometimes before the end of the auction, they can have them recorded. But in most cases, though, it's going to take, you know, some time for the county to get everything recorded. And so we're generally sitting back and kind of waiting. But the risk is getting involved with the property before you have legal proof that it's yours. You know, that's what you want to try to avoid, is getting into a situation where you're taking some kind of action that you can't legally prove you have the right to make.
Yeah, in some counties, you proving that you purchased it will allow it. In other counties, they're going to require you to go ahead and get that deed. It can also be helpful if it's taken a while to contact the county and find up about it, follow up with them about it. You know, how long do you think it's going to take before I get my deed? Make sure that they're going to be mailing it to you. And also you can check online. We've had cases where we can go ahead and get the deed online, but we haven't received the physical deed yet. So it can be helpful to go ahead and look at the transactions through the assessor records and see if that deed is transferred, because if it is, you can go ahead and download a copy of that, print it off, and at least you see that the deed is in your name, and you can start the process of, you know, accessing the property, because you can see that it's been transferred in your name at this point.
Now, once you have the deed, then you can decide, you can begin the process of getting the property listed for sale. You can begin selling the property, but one of the things you need to know going into that is how you're going to sell it, whether you're going to sell it as is, so basically uninsured and unwarranted, you know, so meaning you're going to sell it probably with a quick claim deed, or are you going to sell it either with title insurance or, you know, with a warranty deed? That which path you're going to take is really going to determine what you will end up doing next. If it's uninsured or unwarranted, you know, selling it as is, again, that's what we do with many properties, especially your more inexpensive properties. We're going to sell it this way because it doesn't make financial sense to take them all the way through something like a quiet title action in order to get them sold. Usually, so let's say properties that are valued under $10,000. We're almost always going to be taking these properties and selling them as is. So we'll discount the price of the property in order to sell it. You know, but again, that usually will enable us to sell the property pretty quickly. Now, other things that are nice about it is it still conveys full ownership rights, and we have full ownership rights of the property. And when we sell it, we can convey full ownership rights. The issues there with it being uninsurable or unwarranted don't have anything to do with your ownership rights over the property, or, you know, with what it is you're buying. It doesn't mean that there's something automatically wrong with the property, other than just the fact that it doesn't have that same warranty deed attached to it that counties oftentimes have applied to properties. Which all that's really saying is that they can guarantee the property's, you know, free and clear of, you know, they basically guarantee the ownership, and they can guarantee that there's no current liens against the property at the time of the recording. And so other than that, though, that's really all that warranty really means, and it doesn't take that much in order to lose it. And so if it gets lost, again, that's something you can fix, but it's going to cost some money and take some time. So it's a matter of whether it's easier to just sell the property as is with a discount, or we're going to sell it with, you know, with that warranty deed a little bit later on for full value.
Yeah, well, what the government wants to do, and the reason they're selling it as is they want to eliminate any liability. And so when we're talking about tax deeds, probate deeds, sheriff's deeds, and even many types of bank deeds, mortgage foreclosure deeds are going to be sold with some type of unwarranted deed. So when we acquire this property, we can either sell it as is, kind of with the way the county did to us, where we're selling 100% of our ownership, but it's not a warranted deed. It's not a warranty deed. We're going to be selling it, like Shade said, using a quick claim deed. Or we can go ahead, and if the property has enough value, get it sell it as a warranty deed or an insured deed. So, you know, in this case, we're going to go through that quiet title process if we want to do a warranty deed, which makes it just like any other property. If you guys purchased a home, you purchased a home doing it a warranty deed. If you need to get financing on a property, most banks are going to require you to have title insurance, and most title companies aren't going to issue title insurance on an unwarranted deed, on a tax deed. Now, there is specialty title insurances like Tax Title Services that'll go ahead and offer title insurance on specialty deeds like a tax deed property. So if we're going to sell it for top value or closer to market value, we're either going to need to have the property, go through quiet title to sell it with a warranty deed, or we're going to need to look at a specialty title insurance company that will offer us title insurance on a tax deed property.
Yeah, we always have two options at least, and sometimes we have that third option. And we can always sell the property as is, and we can always pursue quiet titles on properties. And if there is that third option, if there's a local specialty title insurance company that can provide it, we can always use them to get title insurance on tax deed properties. So, you know, if it's a question, you know, should I sell, you know, the property as is? a lot of times that's going to be something that is somewhat value determined or dictated, just because it's going to cost money in order to in order to get that property insured or to make it, to get it turned into a warranty deed again. And so the cost you have going into it and what you can get out of the property obviously is an important part of that. So most of your properties valued from $2,000 up to $20,000 or so, it's probably going to make the most sense to sell the property as is. So if you picked up a property that's valued at $15,000, and let's say that you pay $1,000 for it. Well, what in most cases we would do with that is we're probably going to sell that property as is. And so if it's valued at 15,000, we would probably look and see what we would be competing against in that market. But it wouldn't be unusual to say, okay, do we see this type of property selling for $8,000, for $9,000? And we would look and see if there's anything like that on the market. And if if there's not much, or if that looks like a competitive amount, then that may be where we're going to set the price, is somewhere around there, so that we can try to get a quick sell. And we basically leave in our description exactly how we're selling the property, and how we bought the property. Basically, we're just going to be upfront about everything about the deal, and also why they're getting such a good deal, because it's going to be dramatically underpriced compared to most of the other properties similar to it.
Yeah, most of the property we're going to be selling as is going to be vacant land and lots. Now, that doesn't mean that it needs to be. In fact, as you start doing tax sale investing enough, you'll probably have a property that you could take through quiet title, but because of circumstance, you sell it as is. So knowing how to do this is going to be an important skill. In fact, it's one of the reasons when we're working with students on a one-on-one level, we'll usually have them go through and do a couple of these type of deals so they know how to be able to do them. Now, most of these are going to be cash deals, because you're going to need title insurance to get financing. So most people aren't going to be getting financing on a $10,000 or $15,000 lot. So unless we're offering seller financing, they're usually going to be upfront cash deals. We're usually going to be doing the paperwork ourselves. So we can hire an attorney to be able to do a quick claim deed, but most of the time, for most of us, we're going to do the paperwork ourselves. We're going to go ahead and submit the information to the county itself, and we're going to be selling it using a quick claim deed form. So this is something that we can do in any state, so it doesn't matter where we buy property. You can always sell property as is using a quick claim deed. Now, when we're talking about this, there's really kind of 3 steps that we go over. In fact, for our members, you can always go back and we review these in greater detail in some of our other webinars. But we're going to get a signed purchase agreement, essentially agreeing to buy the property using the terms that we want at the price that we want. Then we're going to go ahead and collect the payment. Once we've collected the payment, then at that point, we're going to go ahead and record the deed in the news buyer's name. Now, there's a bunch of things that comes with that. We're going to need to make sure that we have the right paperwork. We're going to need to make sure that we have the right forms that they need. There may be additional things like tax stamps that need to be acquired, but it's generally pretty inexpensive. It may cost you between $100 to $200, sometimes even less than that, to go ahead and transfer one of these properties that are valued $10,000 to $20,000 using a quick claim deed and using the county's forms and systems.
Yeah, I mean, when we're selling it as is, we are essentially responsible for every part of the sales process here. So, we are responsible for getting the listing up there. We're responsible for responding to people that are interested in it. And if we have somebody that is interested in buying, then we are the ones that would send them, a purchase agreement. And the purchase agreement is going to outline what it is that they're buying here, and the amounts, and basically what the agreement is. And we can have them sign that electronically. And then we can collect payment. Those are basically the prerequisites for us selling the property. As long as they will sign, that agreement electronically, and then make the payment there as they're supposed to make, then we can go through the process there to get the deed transfer done. And so the deed will be recorded in the new property owner's names. And that is a skill, that you'll learn how to do. And that you can always do here with properties from here on out in the future, anytime you want to sell properties as is. Now, if the property value is good enough, though, then it might make sense to sell the property with a warranty deed or with title insurance, so that you don't have to discount it quite so much. We might discount properties that we sell as is 50% of its value, which that's giving away a lot of value on a property. We don't have to do that. and especially to that extent if we have a warranty deed on the property. And so again, if the value is above 20,000, so we're talking about a property that's valued at 40,000, at $50,000, it's probably going to make sense to take it through a quiet title action or to get a warranty deed on it, so that it can be sold with regular title insurance. If somebody's borrowing to buy the property, they can borrow, and the loan, you know, there won't be any problems there because there's title insurance for the deal. You know, and really, if you do sell it this way, it's just like any other transaction that you've seen. When people talk about clear, you know, when people talk about regular transactions or clear title, they're usually talking about warranty deeds. That's kind of what they usually mean. And that's what you could expect. You could have somebody else sell a property for you if you wanted. But in order to make that happen, what we're going to need to do is contact a real estate attorney in the area that can basically go before the local courts and can start a quiet title dispute there before the courts. And that's essentially what you're paying them to do, is to go there before the courts and to start this dispute that they're going to then, you know, send out to previous owners of the property in order to get this warranty deed again. So you basically have to basically determine uncontested ownership rights of the property again legally. And that's really what quiet title action is all about. It's about the legal process we have to go through in order to do that officially.
Yeah, and Shade's right. It's important to contact an attorney in the area or the county where the property is located. So if you live in California and you purchased a property in Florida, you can't have your real estate attorney, or it probably wouldn't be wise to have your real estate attorney in California try to handle that for you on a property in Florida. Because like Shade said, they're going to need to probably go down to the court in person. There is some options now where some of this can be done online, where the attorney can see the court online, but that's not going to be a guarantee, and that's not even something that's going to happen most of the time. And so we're going to need to find somebody there within that's going to be local. And it's really, like we've mentioned, the process of turning this tax deed into a warranty deed. Now, one of the first things that the real estate attorney is going to do is they're going to go ahead and get a title search done on the property, because they're going to need to contact any defendants, any past owners on the property, essentially letting them know that you're going through the quiet title process. So just like they did when they foreclosed on the property, the county had to notify all of the potential owners. The same thing is going to happen again, except for it's going to be done by us, essentially notifying them that we are the sole owner. In a way, it's really kind of a lawsuit. You're kind of suing them. Now, you're not suing them for money or anything like that, but you're suing them saying, hey, I am the only owner of this property. Now, once those certified letters have been mailed out, if they haven't responded within 20 days of those letters going out, then you can take that information before the judge, and the judge will go ahead and issue a motion for final judgment, which essentially means that you won this case, there's no one disputing this property, and they'll go ahead and issue you a warranty deed. Now, 99 times out of 100, or at least somewhere around that number, you're not going to have somebody that disputes this. They've already lost the property through the tax sale. They've probably already went years getting notices about it. So at this point, they're not going to probably contact you. Even if they did, they couldn't get the property back. So usually you're going to go ahead and go before the judge. There's going to be no issue. And once they issue that motion for final judgment, then you can take that information over and get a warranty deed issued on the property through the county.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they've already lost the property according to state law, and the county basically carrying out or enforcing that. So it's not something that can be done to try to reverse what's happened. That's really not what it's about. It's just about determining uncontested ownership rights of the property and being able to say that legally. And to do that legally, they have to be able to basically say, look, we contacted anybody that could even have any kind of a financial interest in this party. So any past owner that was involved here over the last 20 years, we sent back a notification to, letting them know what was happening, basically, that we're doing this, this motion here to quiet title on it. And if anybody has anything that, any claim to make, they can make their claim there. But even if they made a claim, it wouldn't change anything about the ownership. All they could really do is try to somehow throw a wrench into the process of just getting warranty deed, which again, you could still sell the property as is. So they're not really changing anything about ownership. And so generally it's not something where you're going to get any kind of kickback over that. In fact, if you can get to that point there where, the attorney has sent out everything, you've already done most of the hard part, and, and getting the rest of it done shouldn't take too much work. But that's going to cost money though, because that local attorney has to go before the courts, and they have to get all the notices, put together and sent out to the past owner. So obviously, the more past owners there are between, when the property last had a warranty deed, the more expensive it could be. Difference there between contacting 3 different parties or contacting 23 different parties. So that's one of those things that could change the cost. One of the things we look at, and say the property has a simple ownership history. That's kind of what we mean, is that it will be very easy to take this property through a quiet title action, because maybe there's only 2 people that are basically involved or that would receive the notices. So that's kind of what we mean by that. But we want to make sure that we do it with properties that are valuable enough, because it's probably going to cost you a few $1,000s, at least to do this. I would say probably between $2,000 and $4,000 on most properties here. At least the 4,000 probably being on more valuable properties here in areas that are more expensive. But still, it should be a flat rate, kind of like that here on the properties, and essentially enabling you to sell the property for full value and any way you want.
Yeah, and depending if we go through quiet title or use one of the specialty tax title services, one of their type title insurance companies, will probably depend on, what makes sense with that particular property. So if we're in a particular county and we're having a hard time finding an attorney that goes through quiet title, or maybe for some reason it's a more timely process because the county is really slow, the court system there is really slow, but we've got tax title services that could go ahead and offer title insurance on it within 30 days, and we have an interested buyer, well, then it's probably going to be best to do something like tax title services. If we can get an attorney and we feel that the price to go through quiet title is fair, it's going to happen within a quick time, then it probably makes sense to go ahead and go through quiet title, so you can go ahead and issue it as a warranty deed and not even have to worry about trying to get a specialty title company to offer title insurance on it. So once we've picked up the property, we've usually got an idea of what we're going to do, but we might not completely determine what that choice is going to be, whether we go through quiet title or whether we use a specialty title company until we've actually acquired the property and got into it a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the 3 options is going to make the most sense, though. At least there's always going to be, one option that is going to make more sense than the others. At least, in each case, with all the factors that play into it, there's always going to be one that makes the most sense to do. And that's generally kind of how we figure it out, is based on availability of individuals and property value and a lot of other factors, that play into that. But that's usually kind of the planning that we have going into it when we are pursuing the property. So if we acquire it, we kind of already know in the back of our minds, how we're going to go about, trying to monetize it.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at a auction coming up in Glenn County, Georgia. We don't talk about Georgia auctions a lot because most of the auctions are held in person. 90%, if not more, of their auctions are going to be held there at the county courthouse. So because of it, we really only talk about Georgia auctions with some of our Georgia students that are working within that area that have the ability to attend the auctions live. But here's an online auction that's coming up that looks like it's interesting. Shade, I think I sent you the link to that in the chat section. It's on GovEase.
Oh, here we go. I've got it. All right, let me get this out of the way here. All right.
Now, one thing to talk about Georgia real quick, since we're looking at Georgia, is Georgia has a 1-year redemption period. It's a redemption deed state, meaning they offer a 20% penalty. And in addition to that, once that year redemption period is passed, you've got to go through a process where you redeem on, you cancel their right to redeem. So it's not quite like a full foreclosure, but you're going to need to go ahead and fill out the forms and do the paperwork so that at that point, essentially, it extinguishes the owner's right to be able to redeem the property so that you have 100% ownership. So there is a lot of advantages there. You're either going to get the 20% penalty, or you're going to have the chance to acquire the property after that 1-year redemption period is passed.
Yeah, we've got quite a few properties, in this auction too that we can review. Let me just let's pull up here one of them. And one thing that's nice is we do get to have a little preview of the property here, see what it is. And in some cases, we'll be able to see a little bit more information here, know exactly what the value is. We could probably look and see what parcel information here. They make us look it up here. Well, we can look it up here in a second if we want. What we can see about it though is that it looks like a vacant piece of land here.
Yeah, it looks like a vacant piece of land to me. It looks maybe 1.3 acres, I think is what it was.
Oh yes.
It almost kind of looked like there may have been a home on it at one time because it was kind of cleared, but
Yeah, it does look like there could be a home there on it. Now, there's also properties here. I mean, for varying amounts, we can see between $1,200, $1,500 up to about $5,000. And yeah, we can see this one here that is starting at 5,200. It does appear to be a single family home. And
that's kind
yeah,
of interesting. They're not including the addresses on the property, which means that you're going to have to go through the step of looking up the property using the parcel number. But that also, in some ways, I guess it's right there. In
I
some ways,
think
that
maybe that's it. 150 Easy Street, or is it? Well, let's try looking up. Let's see if Easy Street is in Glen Canyon. Glen County, I mean.
it's definitely on an easy street. You could see that it's just from the map. But going through that extra step of looking up that information in the county records is, there's going to be people that just go ahead and avoid that property because they've got to go through the extra steps. In fact, sometimes the harder the list is to work a little bit means that there's going to be less people doing it, which many times means we can get property at a better price.
Yeah, that's it right there. So let's go down here to street level here, which is from November of 2024. And that's 148. So is it going to be this one right here? Yes, it is. So it's this one right here. I guess I can't really move. I can't get closer to it here, but that is going to be our property right there. And let's just do a quick thing to see what the value on it is roughly. $248. We've got interior images there from when it was listed this time.
Yeah, it looks like it was built in 1998, 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Yeah.
Newer home. And one of the advantages of redemption deeds is a lot of times you can get them for a cheaper price than you could if it was a tax deed, because you don't have 100% ownership, and so until that 1-year redemption period is passed. So because of it, you're not going to have quite as high competition as if they were selling this property at a tax deed auction, and that you would own the property automatically. So because of that, many times at redemption deed sales, you can get properties for better prices than you could if it was a tax deed auction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I was looking at it because I think this is actually under the same name as the last property. It looks like it's in a different location. Yeah, this looks like it's on Goodyear Avenue here.
Well,
There's also only a few $1,000s too. It was pretty cheap.
I would imagine that this is probably an investor.
Yeah, that would make sense.
These are probably rental properties. In fact, we saw that, some photos of the interior that could have been the last time they tried renting it out.
Yeah, that is the property right there. Yeah, I'll bet that is a little rental.
$162,000, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, about 1,300 square feet.
Yeah, that's really not bad. I mean, these are considering this is what it's starting at, and all of these obstacles. You know, the fact that it's not on a widely used auction service, the fact that you you can't see some of this information right when you click on stuff. You know that you've got to more or less find the information on your own. All that's going to do is just weed out more competition and make for better deals for those that are actually registered and can bid on these properties.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at a couple of more. And there's so many auctions taking place. I mean, each month there's literally hundreds of auctions taking place. Now that's something that looks like it's probably a piece of land. Maybe it's something more than that, but you
Yeah, it
can
looks
see
like
it's kind of
about
there at the
3/4
end.
of an acre. Yeah, 3/4 of an acre there. So I think what that is.
In a piece of land, you're more likely to get through a redemption deed than you would one of those homes, for example. It's more likely to end up in ownership. So if that land had good value, it could be worth looking at. This is another that's actually a really nice piece of land. You can see that looks like it has road access there.
Yeah, it's 10 acres, although it looks like it's all kind of, oh yeah, that's interesting. It's the location on it is listed as 502 Butler Drive here in probably New Brunswick. Oh, look at that. What is that? Is that an old building?
I don't know what that is.
Wow, so weird.
It almost looks like, well, I was going to say an overpass, but
So somebody takes all the bodies.
yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah. Now, what's crazy about it? That one's like 32,000, and I'm sure the value on it has got to be pretty high. But it's 10 acres of property there under this LLC there that took it. But yeah, kind of interesting property. I'm not sure what in the world all that stuff is. This one doesn't even give us. This one is also like 0.85 acres. So this one's more of like a lot. It gives us a lot, but then there's an address there for it. But again, not that much. I was looking at, I think that was $2,000. Let me look at one more here. See the $3,000 one here. And this one's another house, which again, these are pretty good deals, and they're probably not going to bid up too high compared to most of your regular tax deeds. And so what's nice about that is you're either going to make a good interest rate return, on your money of roughly 20%, or you are going to acquire the property for a low price. It's going to be one thing or the other, which is a pretty good opportunity. Yeah, look at that house. That's a nice little house there, considering it's at $3,000. Let me show you here.
Yeah, in fact, any of our students that that have plenty of capital and don't mind sitting on a capital for a while, we recommend looking at different auctions like this, because you can pick it up for a better price. You can sit on your money, and then a year from now, if you're able to acquire the property, you picked up the property at a great price. Otherwise, you're going to get paid back a great interest rate return on your money, where you can take that money and put it back into another property like this. So this doesn't work for everyone. Redemption deeds don't work for everyone, but they do work for a lot of investors out there that don't mind sitting on their money for 12 months. And in this case, we'd probably say more like 14 months by the time we, go through and extinguish their right of redemption, start securing the property if it's something like a home, and starting the selling process. But if you have time to wait, this is a great opportunity in redemption deeds like here in Georgia.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking about this redemption, it's not just limited to like homeowners who occupy the properties or who have like the exemption, like it is in in certain areas there. Really, this applies to all the properties there, and essentially, so whether if it's occupied, it still applies to the property there, and when you can take possession of it. If it's unoccupied, it's the same way basically with these properties, and the 1-year redemption period that they get. And so even if that expires, if you bought the property at auction and the 1-year redemption period expires, then essentially, yeah, like what Steve was saying, the only thing you need to do is you go through a process to essentially remove their rights to redeem it. But essentially, though, the property is yours after that. Now, here in the case of Georgia, is there a possibility that there will be multiple past tax liens when a redemption deed is offered? So is it possible that you could have other liens that would be owed here on the property? And I guess it probably depends on the sale that you're dealing with, I would say, because sometimes they will have that wrapped up in the opening bid amount, having that kind of be the starting point. If it's not, if they have the starting point like it's some flat amount like $100, then it's probably worth looking at and seeing if they have some amount that's also going to be added to the sale amount that's related to taxes, because there usually is.
If there is, it would probably be the more current taxes. So during that redemption period, and it'll kind of depend on the individual state and even the county on how that's set up, but there could be additional fees that could be applied during that potential year if the property owner didn't pay their property taxes. But that's part of the reason why we always emphasize going and making sure that you understand, you read the tax sale rules, you read all the FAQs, you know everything about that particular auction before investing in it. That way you know exactly what you're to expect. And so if there is additional fees, you plan for that before you even bid it on it. If there's not, you know that before you've bid it on it. So before investing in any of these auctions, it's one of the first steps we have in our 10 steps of investing is to go ahead and read that information and become familiar with it so you don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, in fact, there's lots of good questions you guys have. Does the redemption period start the day after the auction? Is it possible that some properties may have just a couple of months of redemption period left when they're at the auction? And yeah, I mean, so
that's more in Texas.
Yeah, that
where the
is kind of
redemption period, and I believe in Georgia, and I'll have to check to read the statute again, but I'm pretty sure the redemption period starts on the day of sale in Georgia.
yeah, that is very possible. But essentially, yeah, from the date of the sale, though, even then, it's because the time period passes relatively fast. 1 year is not too long here, especially if
Yeah,
you can get a property at a much cheaper price, which with it being 1 year, it drives off a lot of investors. So that if you can get a property for 25% of what it would normally cost you, is the 1 year worth it? And I think the answer is yeah, definitely.
in any of these redemption deed states, it's important to go through and read what that state is, because Texas is going to be very different than Georgia. Shade already talked about in Georgia, it doesn't matter if the property is homesteaded, it doesn't matter if it's a structured property, a piece of land, all of them have a 1 year redemption period. With Texas, it's going to depend on the type of property. If it's a homestead property or farmland, it has 2 years. If it's any other type of property, commercial land, or does not have a homestead exemption on it, then it's going to be 6 months. And in the case of Georgia, the foreclosure starts when the foreclosure happened. So usually that's going to be a couple of months before the auction even takes place. And so in the case of Texas, the property could already be 3 months into a 6-month redemption period. But I don't believe that's the case in Georgia. I'm pretty sure in Georgia, it's going to start on the day of the sale. Same thing as Tennessee as well. So we'll want to read the state laws for that particular area so that we understand exactly when that redemption period is going to start.
Yeah. Also, so when you win a redemption deed, when do you become responsible for the holding cost? Well, so it's not going to be during the time period there, during the redemption period. You're not going to have to worry about that. You would only begin to take responsibility for the holding cost after the redemption period is expired, and after, if it's in Georgia, where you've already foreclosed on their rights to redeem the property. At that point, you basically can take physical possession of the property. At that point, the state's, the county's going to start to bill you for the property as well. And so that's when you kind of take over with that.
Yeah, that's true. In most states, in Tennessee and in Georgia, places like that, that's going to be completely correct. Texas is a little bit different because you have ownership rights once you purchase the property at the auction. So, Texas is kind of its own bag of tricks, so to speak, where they're going to have their own, rules that apply to them that aren't going to apply in other states.
Does New York Medicaid lien survive the tax deed auction there?
No, it shouldn't. Most of those type of liens aren't going to be connected to the property. It's going to be a lien against the individual and not a lien on the property. So if the property isn't collateral for the lien, most of those type of liens aren't going to stick to a property. There is some cases where we've seen medical liens stick, like I believe in Oklahoma, but in New York, it's usually going to be some type of city lien. Even state and federal liens, are pretty rare. And even many of the state liens aren't going to stick if they're not using the property as collateral.
All right. Oh yes, you saw the lien against the estate of the deceased. Actually, so estates and seeing things like death certificates are something we actually run into all the time when we are doing research on looking for liens against properties. That because we're searching the names of past owners, we always come into contact with the things like things that basically indicate that somebody's passed away, and that oftentimes show we can actually sometimes see exactly how the property ended up in the sale to start with. Now, I think what we're going to do now is, we'd like to share a quick video with everybody. We're going to see if we can get this to work here, because I just want to see if our audio will work. Okay, now one thing I want to find out really quick is you guys have been leaving some great questions. Can you guys hear this?
No,
You can't hear it either, Steve?
no. I'll have to try it again another time.
We will have to try it again. I thought for sure I would have it figured out this time here, but I do not. Well, never mind.
We're still trying to figure out this new technology stuff.
That's right. We're a little slow on that side of it there, I suppose. I mean, I guess I turn up the speakers here, but I don't know
We'll figure it out for next podcast.
Yeah.
We want to start watching a few different videos and kind of reviewing and talking about videos that have to do with real estate, tax sale investing, anything like that. So what we'll do is we'll finish this up with answering any other questions you guys have before we call it a night.
Yeah. Can you explain again how to check for recorded deeds online, or do you mean liens online or deeds? We actually check the same place. So whenever we're looking for information like, let's say, liens against a property or even a deed against a property, it's going to be the same office within the county or local government that is responsible for that, and that's the county recorder's office. The recorders are responsible for recording property deeds as they come in, but it's also going to be through the recorder's records that we're going to find liens that are issued through, on properties as well, because they all have to be done essentially through the legal records, and that's what the recorder controls. So a lot of times, if we're looking into a county and we are looking up records related to a property, so let's say we're looking up if we're looking at a specific property and we want to know about its ownership history, well, we're always going to start with the most recent owner, and we're going to work our way back in time until we find a warranty deed. So in other words, if the last person that owned it, bought it using a warranty deed, then we may only need to search one name. But if they sold it to other people with quitclaim deeds, then we'll have to search multiple names there. But we're going to look up that owner's name, and generally everything that's going to pull up on that are things that are attached to that name. And what we're looking for in addition to that is something that also includes the legal description for our property. There's going to be an area there within the results that you pull up for different types of documents, and then also legal descriptions when it applies. And so we can use those types of records to look for specifically. We can look for deeds if we want there. We can read the deeds, which that's always a good idea to learn things about the property. But that's also where we're going to find liens against the property as well. And so that's always where liens are going to be issued, whether it be I mean, an IRS lien or a state lien, but by far, 9 times out of 10, we're going to find local liens like cleanup liens and things like that. And so that's usually where we can find those types of liens, or in the recorder's office and in their records online.
Yeah, in fact, we have lots of different videos. In fact, our video library in the members section can be a huge resource. In fact, our most successful students usually spend a lot of time watching some of those videos. So we have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 due diligence videos within there, which will take you through all of the steps of finding the deed, researching for liens, determining if a property is good, and then what you need to do to bid on the property. Based on the property's value, how high should you bid? So if you watch those 3 videos in there, stage 1, 2, and stage 3 due diligence, it'll really help you in answering any of those questions and knowing how to be able to do that. In fact, even what we were going over today, we were talking about selling a property, as is, or selling a property with a warranty deed, or warranted, or insured. We break down in videos on how to be able to sell a property as is. What forms do you need? What's included in those forms? So if you have any questions, if there's things that you don't know, chances are we have taught a video or a training about it, that you can find those replays within the training library.
Yeah. Now, Joyce is saying, I bought a tax deed in Illinois in September, and I still haven't got my deed in the mail yet. And online, it still shows the county owning the property. So I would reach out to them. You're not the first person that we've talked to from some of the Illinois sales, where I don't know if they've been slow with some of the, in some areas to do it, but with it being so long, considering that they're on like 4 months now, I would probably reach out to them and see what the holdup is, because you should have received the deed, by now. It doesn't usually take that long. And so find out if something went wrong, or, if it went somewhere else, or, you just try to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. In fact, that was part of the reason we were talking about it earlier when we were talking about that, is to go ahead and give the county contact the county, find out, what the process is, how quickly they think it's going to be. And with Illinois in specifically, it could be also worth it to contact the attorney that handles the Illinois tax sales and see if they could give you any insight about where they are in the process as well, making sure that they've given all that information over to the county, which I think that they had, but they may have a better idea of how long it takes within that particular county. Because sometimes we can get it within 30 days, and other times, they can lag behind.
Yeah, well, and if it's still showing, if the ownership information hasn't changed yet online, it's still clearly, that they haven't recorded it yet, then, call them up and get on it. You can kind of tell, that they are getting behind here on that, or that they should have done it a little faster. But oh, nice. It sounds like somebody else here in Illinois. He said, I contacted the attorney they gave me info on, and then I contacted the county, and I finally got the deeds.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to put a little pressure on them.
Yeah, yeah, that
It's not
is
going to
true.
hurt anyway, especially if you're friendly about it.
Yeah, one other question here is, what is the process of finding an address if it's not listed? So if we don't see like an address listed on the record we're looking at, then what we usually try to do is look for the nearest 2 cross streets, and we just use those 2 cross streets. Google Maps is incredible at its ability to find locations based on nothing more than just 2 cross streets. And so, if something is on, uh, Hector Boulevard and First Street, if I type in, Hector Boulevard and First Street, it will automatically finish the rest of that for me and show me, the only location where there is, an intersection of a Hector and First Street. And so that's one of the ways that we'll find it is if we can just see that, 2 cross streets, overhead, then that's usually enough if we don't have a physical address here on the property. Uh, then we're usually trying to find it on Google Maps, and so if that's the case, we're usually trying to basically just figure out whatever we can to zero in on that location on Google Maps. And then if we have to, we'll make up an address for the property so that we can find it from that point forward.
I'd just like to know where this Hector Boulevard is at. Another thing that we can do is we can look and see if there's any other homes nearby. So if I see a home, let's say across the street, and I'm looking at a vacant lot, I can look at the address of that home. In fact, GIS maps, the online maps have made this so much easier. When me and Shade first got started, we had to try to figure it out using plat maps. But with the satellite imaging, you can kind of see just based on, where the lot's located, different characteristics, whether that be a tree or something in the yard or in the lot, and that should be able to help you narrow it down. So doing like what Shade said, looking at the 2 different locations, the 2 different cross streets, or looking at one of the surrounding neighbors and looking at their address is usually the best way to hone in where that property is located on Google Maps. And then you can look at the GIS map and Google Maps kind of together to determine exactly where that lot is located.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for watching. We appreciate all of your time, all the great questions that you've had. We hope you'll come back here again. We'll be back again next week, but we'll be doing more episodes like this of the Tax Sale Titans. If you guys enjoy that, we will continue to do it.
Yeah, thank you guys, and we appreciate it, and we'll get the replay out to all the members.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you then.